Okay, let's see if I still remember how to do this. We are back with white against a 2103. So let's get going with e4. I obviously have not been posting a lot of videos lately. I've just had a ton of different things grabbing my attention, but I don't intend for this series to totally fade off. So with e4, do we get to play into a Scotch, or do we get deviation, maybe a Petrov? Always a good choice. You get an 8c6, alright. I also just realized that I accidentally started 10 plus 5 instead of 5 plus 5, but okay, I guess we'll sit in for a longer game today. Because normally I would play 10 plus 5, but for the purposes of this series, we keep them a little bit tighter. So this is going to go into a 4 knights then. When I play knight c3, protect e4. We don't take on c6 right away, but if they play bishop to b4, then we certainly will. If they play bishop c5, I don't fully recall if it's supposed to be takes or bishop e3, but yeah, that is not the main line, so we won't bother with that. And the knight is now pinned, so we have to protect this pawn. Pushing is, what's the rule? It's never good except for, I think, when this bishop has been traded maybe for this knight. And I want to say that comes back to if we're supporting it with f4, we don't want stuff like bishop c5 check after we've castled, but for now bishop d3 is an easy move. And then d5 and castles are pretty much interchangeable, but same thing, we're not rushing into pushing. We are, I believe, just going to castle. Or possibly we were supposed to take that. I don't remember. I think those are also interchangeable for white. It's been a little while since I've looked at this from the white side, certainly. I know what I'm doing is black, but I might end up having to scramble a bit. But takes is fine, I think, is just rook e1, and we should be able to work with this, because we pin that, or maybe not, because then they just castle. And then we can't take because this queen is being attacked down here. Okay. So I might be playing down a pawn for a bit, because I was supposed to take on d5 first. Yeah, I do have a bit of extra time, as I said, so... Yeah, you know, I don't know if I've ever actually played this in a game as white, but it is supposed to go pawn takes, and then castles, because then we don't have to worry about this. But okay, I can argue I have compensation. I do have these two bishops, so it's not the worst pawn to accidentally give up, but it still should not have been allowed, so can't realistically avoid trading queens, because of course rook e1 castles anyways. And then we still have to move the bishop, and then we've just moved our rook for no reason, so... no, I guess queen e2, sorry. That would also work, because then we're still pinning the pawn, and then, yeah, then we can move the bishop away. So that's likely my preference, just if there's something with, like, a bishop g4. And then I start wondering if we ever could take this pawn right away. Because if we trade queens, knight takes, rook e1, it's a pin that they can't get fully out of, and if they protect with f5, you still have these tricks with f3. So maybe that is actually fine. Because we're castled, which is great news. Bishop takes, threatens c6, so they are very limited. Maybe it's just if they play knight takes. Because then if we trade queens, they're not lined up on e-file anymore. And if we play like queen e2, queen e7, then rook e1, I think that still works. And same thing, there's always this f5, f3, and they aren't in time to castle. And I don't want to play down a pawn, so I'm trying to make that work. If I am not too rusty to calculate a 4 or so mover. So bishop takes, if we trade queens, that's fine. Knight takes, rook e1, we will be able to play f3, I believe, for sure. Bigger question is if they try to ignore it, or ignore the queens rather, play knight takes. Because rook e1 doesn't work, they take, we take, they're unpinned. And I said we can't take, but we can, I believe, play queen e2. I don't think there are any weird in-betweens, so let's try it. And if it goes wrong, then we will all have learned something today. by the way, queen takes queen. I can't play bishop takes c6 because there is queen d7 there, and I have to give up my extra bishop for getting the queen back. So let's be ready for an exchange, and then yeah, knight takes e4 I think is sort of more challenging, although I don't know if the evaluation is actually any different. Because my idea will work out to be the same, and if they take too long to castle, I would definitely love to throw in bishop a3, because then if their king gets stuck, then I think we have a lot of promise. And if they don't take, then I guess it's like bishop d7 or something, but then I'm playing with two bishops and I'm not down any material, so I would be very happy with that. We don't have any other realistic options, because we are down a piece. We definitely have to fight to get that back. But it is one of these pins. This is a very common type of tactic in a bunch of openings where these center pawns get traded and then a piece gets pinned, and there's, I still don't believe, a way for them to rescue that piece. And then we'll play some opposite colored bishop endgame, which is cool. I don't mind my chances with that. And then maybe I can give a quick refresher on, again, what we were supposed to do when we're playing the Scotch Four Knights. It's not complicated, I just wasn't paying attention to what my opponent's possibilities were. I was playing a little too much on autopilot. I never know if I'm supposed to fill the quiet with words, but okay. We do get a move, bishop f5. We were ready for this. They could castle both ways, so we have to be ready for f3, or have to play f3 now that this knight is protected to force this through. And I think their plan is going to be to pin me in response. So castle, I would figure kingside, okay, or queenside. I guess that's fair actually, because then takes, then the other rook comes to e8, and that e4 pawn is pinned. And maybe they can try to argue c7 is protected. Maybe bishop e3, though, try to take on a7. I think I'd be okay with that, although I have to be careful about letting a rook come down to d2. But either way, this move has to be played quickly. And the other argument there is if they attack this pawn and I push it, they could take on c2, which I don't think I want to allow, because this is a very weak pawn anyways. I'm surprised why they pick that rook and not the other one. Because number one, this rook is just sitting in the corner, and number two, there's not going to be that option of rook d2 anymore. So I probably end up down a pawn, but as I'd already identified, opposite colored bishops will not be very dangerous, especially if they have doubled c-pawns. So I'm figuring probably bishop e3 attacks this pawn, and at that point I would be threatening to take the bishop, so I would think they take on e4, I take on a7, and then I would guess trading rooks, because otherwise I would guess. And then they're just attacking this pawn on c2, which, as I said, I don't really plan on keeping. So yeah, bishop, let's say rook takes or bishop takes. They might just play bishop takes, take, take. Try to let me trade rooks, but then I like king f2 and my king's getting up there. And if they play rook takes, take, I mean, then I have the rook on the open file, so no, probably most likely is rook takes, take on a7, they double their rooks. And then how intent am I on keeping rooks on the board? I mean, I should honestly play this faster too, because I'm pretty certain it's what I'm going to play. Nothing else makes a lot of sense to me. I need this rook to be protected, and there's no way to save this pawn as I do so. So yeah, okay, let's get moving. Yeah, I don't mind showing off some defense if I have to. It's not what should be happening when I'm, playing down and reading, but as we've been over a bunch of times, commentating is definitely a distraction. So we will make sure we get a more useful pawn here, because we do get a passed a pawn, which is something they will always have to be careful of. And honestly, all on its own, if we trade rooks, I think that pretty much guarantees a draw, as long as that pawn stays on the board. So my question is, do I really encourage these rook trades, or do I let them come to me? So if we take once, they do get a little more control over the open file. They're just king f2, and I don't think they really get anything out of it. Just rook e1, and then my rook can go wherever it's needed, whether that's e2, e3, even e7. If we play king f2 right away, the only real difference is maybe they play like rook d8, and I can't play rook d1. But then maybe bishop d4, and I get to fight for some initiative of my own, attack g7, and maybe get some time for rook e7. So I think I do like king f2 better. Be more patient. We definitely don't have to force this rook trade. I've been anticipating this bishop coming back to d4 for a long time. It's hard for them to shake because they have a lot of trouble pushing c5. And even if they do, like, these doubled pawns are really not useful. So in almost every way, it's like we're playing with an a pawn against an f pawn. And the c pawns all cancel out, even though there's technically an extra black one. Yeah, I definitely do have more time to explain things when it's 10 plus 5, but if the game itself can take up to half an hour and then there's analysis on top of that, I don't want to be putting out, regular hour-long videos. So that will make it harder to incentivize myself to get them going, but we'll see. Maybe I'll try to mix them up, throw them in once in a while at least, compared to 5 plus 5. So I have a rook that I will need to activate. I don't know that I'll have a lot of success pushing the a-pawn. I mean, their bishop currently fights against a4. I'd really like to get that pawn probably to a5. Like, I'd want it to be on a dark square where I can protect it. But I don't know, it might get a little uncomfortable. Bishop e4, okay. A little unexpected, but I guess they can do that. I was just thinking, like, if the rooks get traded and we're playing a bishop endgame, if their king comes up and starts attacking my queen set, I'm not even sure if that a-pawn can stay on the board, just because if my bishop's trying to protect it on a3 or a5, maybe their king can chase it, or there's a pawn c5 that just messes with my bishop, but not hugely important right now. So I'm thinking maybe we double rooks, like rook e3 and then double, but they will just play f5, and that doesn't get very far. So I'm leaning towards bishop d4 first, just ask them about the g7 pawn, and then probably we will start pushing the a-pawn at least a little ways. If nothing else, it will be a distraction for a while, and I honestly do think even if I lose the a-pawn, it is probably still pretty firmly in the margins of a draw. Okay, f6, I wasn't so much expecting, because now if we try to double, they can't play f5. And I think I'm inclined to push towards that rather than trying to throw this a-pawn forward. But I'm not sure, like, a4, they might have to be smart and like try to get a king to a6 or something, or else this pawn is going to go pretty far. Like a4, king moves, a5. So once it gets to a6, we do have that barrier over here, and if it gets to a7, then I don't know if they're ever realistically getting at it. So sure, let's poke at them a little bit. I won't commit to strict defense yet, not while I have an asset that they don't, which is this outside passed pawn. I'm curious to test this concept. Like when you have opposite colored bishops, you'd normally say you like to be an attacker because the bishops can't fight against each other, so if you're attacking, it's like you have an extra piece, but I don't know if that's supposed to apply in an endgame like this too. Okay, they do move the king, which is probably wise. So do I still go with a5? Unsure. Rook e3 doesn't really get me anywhere. Neither does rook e2, like a check. This king always comes here, and I don't reasonably have something with that. I think this pawn might be a little better where it is. I think we will actually pile up on this bishop. If they try to come over and get this pawn, well, they have to figure out what's going on with this bishop first. And then I'll try to create some kind of barrier. Okay, so they do trade one pair of rooks, which is, or want to, which is fair. So double takes, rook e7 becomes a threat, so probably they will play rook e8. If we trade that as well, I can definitely make it a challenge for them to win the a-pawn. Don't know if I'll have real chances on the king side. And then what if I double first? Kind of goes the same, or sorry, if I take first, it's probably just a slightly less good version. Okay, we'll do this then. Yeah, rook e8, which they likely should. I guess I don't have to take that either. I could prep with bishop c5 and then try to argue I'm making my little bit of progress. If they take me, my king comes forward a bit. So my thought is bishop c5, king a6, bishop b4, and then their king can't get after the a-pawn. Although they'd always have, yeah, that comes back to my other problems. Like a bishop gets to c2, we push king b5, and then c5, and that bishop gets chased. But I was thinking even then, if they play king takes a5, then I play bishop takes c5, because that pawn has to be on c5 to chase my bishop. And if like their king keeps trying to come forward, the pawn starts pushing. I mean, we're getting a ways down the road, but we can definitely do this. And actually, now that I think of that, my king can just come to d4, and then there's never a way for them to play c5 ever. End of story. Because I will have two things attacking a dark square, and their king is the only piece on the board that can ever attack c5. Okay, well, probably won't offer a draw, but I think I reasonably could. Just need to not let them get a weird passed pawn on the king side. Maybe they aren't getting there. Yeah, okay, just in time with... no, they aren't. Not with tempo, sorry. This is fine. King a6, bishop b4, king b5, king d4. And there's no c5. I mean, they could deflect the bishop. I take one of the doubled pawns, they take the a-pawn, but that's fine. That is extremely drawish. And again, they can't wander too far with the king because, as I said, this pawn would push a couple of steps. Okay, so they do that. That's fine. Okay, so is there any kind of professional way to play this? I'm not entirely sure, but might as well attack a pawn. Possibly I should be playing like an h4, g3, and then try to make that my anchor point that I'm defending, but not sure how important that is. But there is the mini lesson that if we push their pawns onto light squares, those pawns are not controlling dark squares, which gives my bishop full free reign. I was even thinking bishop d8 forces king b6, so sort of pulls them back that step, which, I don't know, it's kind of useful. Yeah, we can probably just get ahead with g3 and h4. I don't reasonably see anything else. I mean, I could, I guess, try to walk my king up this way. It's probably not a bad idea, actually. Maybe we should have done that while their king is so distracted. But this is never, ever losing. Like, I can just sit a bishop on this diagonal to protect the c-pawn, and then my king sits in front of whatever pawns are doing on the king side. Yeah, I probably should have started this faster. g3 was probably a wasted move, but I mean, they certainly shouldn't be losing this up a pawn, but it was just an idea for me to come over and start to attack something. But yeah, there's nothing they can do, because they can never shake my bases of c3 certainly, and then most likely g3. Their king can't even come to f6 to ever help, like an h6, g5. I could literally just sit here and move my bishop back and forth. But we'll see if I feel like trying anything more active. They should probably reckon with king g5, king h6. It might be a little bit spooky for them. But if I win this, I deserve a medal. Honestly, if they offer a draw, I'm not sure I would take it right away. I think I would probably try my idea of coming over here and at least making their king run back to g8. But active king, obviously very valuable in an endgame, because if anyone's going to attack a pawn, it's going to be me going after h7. They can't get after any of my pawns. But if they play, like, let's say h5, king f7, and offer a draw, then yeah, there's nothing left to play for because they're just protecting their own pawn base. And if you really wanted to finish it, something like c6, bishop e4, and yeah, they're all on the light squares, I'm all on the dark squares. That's how these endgames are supposed to go if we don't get two out of line. Yeah, not to get too ahead of myself, but I'm curious how bad this ever was for white if it ever dipped below, like, I don't know, a few tenths of a pawn. Below 0. Okay, they're coming up this way. That's bold. They probably want to play c5, but my bishop just stays over here. I don't think I mind allowing king e4, as long as I keep one of my pawns alive. I could play h4 first to be super safe. Like king up, king up, king up. I can take one of their pawns. I mean, I can prep that with bishop e5 too. I just can't let a passed pawn through like g5 and f4. But they really aren't in position to do something with that. This move is definitely fine, and then I'll see if I want to keep going or if I want to play h4. Yeah, we'll keep going. It does give me a chance to attack, which of course we always like. f4, totally fine to trade that. I mean, again, it's just so hard for me to create a passed pawn in 2 versus 3. That's why I don't think there should ever be anything here. Okay. I was briefly wondering, do I throw in bishop e5 and like bishop f4? And I think I do want to protect against that. It attacks c7, which they should probably move. And then do I throw in bishop f4 or do I just take on h7? I'm not sure. Because they'll try probably some kind of discovery trick with a check on my king. Which is the one thing I'm trying to guard against here. Because like I said, a passed f-pawn is more of a concern, but if I play bishop f4, then they can't realistically play g5. So something like c6, bishop f4, and like they can't save this h-pawn anyways. And if they play g5, what would happen there? If we took that, they played f4. No, I think we'd want to play h4 first. Okay. So yeah, this way sort of threatens g5. So I think we go, yeah, h4. Wait, they haven't taken... Yeah, because they want to play king h3, that's it. So I don't think we want to just take on c7. Sorry, got a little distracted there again. Take c7, king h3. I have no idea how I'm supposed to evaluate that. Well, I do. It's probably a draw. But anyways. Yeah, now if they let me take on c7, obviously I will, and if they don't, then yeah, I think we do this. Because I do not want them playing that g5, f4 stuff. So we can totally lock that down. They don't have any weird pawn breaks. I am on top of that. And then we can finally take h7. They can play king h5. That will hold. But otherwise I would be able to play pawn takes g5 and not give them anything with the f-pawn. So I don't know if they are getting concerned, but king takes h7, king h5 is a pretty dead position. Actually, it's one of the most dead positions you can come up with. "12 seconds is enough with 5-second increment. There aren't a lot of things to think about here. it's definitely a thing. Like, there's obviously such a reputation for these endgames being draws, but people do misplay them quite significantly. So at this point, if they offer a draw, yeah, I will accept that. That is entirely reasonable. Because their bishop protects this point, their king protects this point. Same thing for my bishop. There's nothing we can reasonably do here, so we won't waste anybody's time. Okay, so let's hop in here and come back to this. So, 4 knights, Scotch, that's fine. There's up to here, and then yeah, I castled when I should not have. I'm virtually certain we're supposed to take here and then do this, and then they can castle here, and then what's our exact move order? I want to say we start with h3, and then queen f3, and then we figure out this bishop after that. I believe that's the setup we go for, and I'll check that in a moment. But castles, yeah, they get to take this piece, which is not supposed to happen. I think I worked it out okay. What was it I was saying? I think it was this I said was a wasted move, because when they castle, we have to move the bishop, and then my rook has to move a second time, something like that. I was looking at queen e2. I may not have come up actually with the perfect answer in my live analysis here, where I think I can play the same kind of thing with rook e1. And then their queen is vulnerable. But on the flip side, if they play like bishop f5 or even castles, would I take that and go into rook e8? I guess, but this is kind of awkward to hold on to. I don't know if there's a lot there. I mean, there are a bunch of these tiny differences we could look into, but the main point is here as well. If they had played knight takes was the other big question. We don't take because then there's no threats. I can't pin the knight, and if I give a check, they can block with either the knight or the bishop, so I'm not getting anything there. So I have to play queen e2, because if you play rook e1, then they take, and the same issue. We can't actually get this knight back. So queen e2, if they're going to hold the knight, it's either queen e7, bishop f5, but let's say the queen, and then the rook. If they play bishop, we can still play f3. I noticed a check doesn't scare us because their knight is still pinned at the end of that. So they might just castle here, let me take. It's probably actually the way to do things. And then I can block a check with queen e3. So I'm not losing c3. If we say something like this, right? Queen here, check, and material is equal. I guess I have a weaker pawn, but that's not really any different than the game went. So stuff like that. You can look more into that if you're interested. But then takes. Of course, they're going to take my bishop, because otherwise it is just good for white. And then we get the knight back, and then, yeah, they have their options for coming after the c4 pawn. And yeah, definitely I don't know why you would not play this rook. That just seems like such an easy question. Because if I try the same kind of thing here, they took with the bishop. If I take here, then there's rook d2. And I'm getting nervous about a couple of these points. I'd probably play bishop f2, I guess. But even then, rook takes here. This is, I think, a worse version, because they've gotten a much more active rook compared to the one that was sitting on h8 in the game. So that seems like a layup that they just didn't play. I may have just played like bishop f4. But then I don't get my passed a pawn as compensation, so it's a more significant pawn down than losing this doubled c pawn, obviously. And like bishop g5 doesn't work because there's just f6, and I have to move the bishop again. So I might have even come around to this anyways. Said, sure, you can take on c2. Not sure. Then this, then maybe like rook e3, rook e1, and sitting like that. Again, we're figuring out which pawns are the most and least valuable, and that will guide our decisions for which ones we're willing to let go. Yeah, bishop takes, they go rook takes. I sort of expected this, because then they can half correct their mistake, double like this, but even here, it's probably very similar. Something like this, and even if they end up winning this pawn somehow, it's fine. Or if they take here, then again, it's also very similar, of course. So here, take that. Figured, yeah, let's let them come to me if they so choose. A little surprised by that compared to, let's say, rook g8 and then f5, but I think at this point the evaluation is probably not going to change much, if at all. Like, unless I missed something really, really significant, which I would be very surprised by. Because, yeah, stuff just gets traded. If they had prepared or tried to prepare with king b5, same idea, king d4, and at best for them you get up to something very similar. Trying to deflect my bishop from this pawn, but it costs them a pawn to do it, because they just can't do both at once with their king. They can't protect their own pawn on c5 and also take my pawn on a5. So the fast version, and then, yeah, I guess my last question is here. If I had gone a little faster, would I have gotten anything out of this that was different? But I don't know. I mean, they had that king h5 in the game, but we just play out some moves like this. Bishop has to move again. I mean, again, worst case, they just sit back either here or here. So no, I don't think this is actually any better. Just maybe they had to be like a tiny bit more accurate if they play it this way. Or c6 is kind of a stupid move, but sorry, let's say something like this, just to be ready. And then they're admitting a little earlier that they can't actually progress, but they're also in no danger. And after that, yeah, like, it shouldn't be hard for you to just set up a base with an opposite color bishop, because the whole premise of these endgames are that they can't attack anything on dark squares unless they can manage to coordinate their king and their pawn somehow. So here, chose not to take here because this was a little scarier that maybe they actually get a passed pawn, and I don't reasonably think this pawn has prospects on c3 because their bishop can always control one of the squares in front of it. But I guess a better example is to show what I would be concerned about. Let's say here is if we take here, they play g5. I take, they give this discovered check, and then I guess this probably doesn't work because they'll have to give up their bishop for my pawn as well. I was imagining cases where, like, if this pawn doesn't exist, then I think that's a huge problem for white. I don't know if there was actually a place where that would have come into play, but that's just the kind of thing I was thinking about. Here, I guess, maybe is a better example. If we go like this, g5, and then they aren't giving up this pawn. And then I have to worry about checks here, and I don't know, even then I guess it probably doesn't really go anywhere. Like, as soon as these liquidate, obviously there's nothing to play for. So yeah, we just settled in, and that was that. Okay, so let's come back to here. So move 7 in Scotch Four Knights. So it was a Scotch. Takes, and then you have to look at net f6, bishop b4, take that, bishop d3. Yeah, it looks like our main move is castling rather than d5, which changes things a little bit, but obviously they're very, very close to one another. d5, yeah, we are supposed to take that, and then, yeah, something like here, and then did I have any other notes? No, because this transposes back to castling first. So d5, take that, take, and okay, it is queen f3 first that I suggested. You can play bishop g5 as well, but this was the end of our big setup for the Scotch Four Knights. Just develop the queen, and then the dark square bishop will have a square. So that's really all there is to say there, but how bad is this that we did not do that? We just castled. Bishop takes is point a couple, quick refresh, because it's move 8, and that's where Lichess always freezes. So d takes, and okay, this may not be sound if the machine is seeing far enough. I am supposed to leave that on the board. Let's say rook e1, bishop moves. I mean, felt like it was a bad version that we can do better than. What about queen e2? Castles, or not castles, I guess. Queen e7, rook e1. Sure, let's say we take a quick look at this. Rook e8, is f3 okay? Sort of, but bishop g5 would be better to pin that knight. And then we can come back to that, and I would guess we make sure to trade this so that we don't get into too much trouble on e4. Let's say, yeah, this queen e7 version, rook e1. And okay, we would be okay to take this. It wouldn't be too bad. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. I did gloss over this tactic that they can't allow this. And then they lose on e7. So they can't play rook e8 there, after all. But even if you just trade a bunch of stuff, then of course that's going to be extremely equal. And I guess, sure, you could argue white is maybe a tiny bit better just because the rook is activated and black hasn't gone there yet, but it's very small. Okay, so what was our problem here? They can play knight takes, it looks like, rather than queen takes. And as identified, yeah, we would have played queen e2, queen e7, and then what is so bad about this version? it would have just been a rook e8, and then I guess we're just losing this pawn more cleanly. Yeah, I guess that's a fairly straight road, because, yeah, of course, we have to pin this knight to win it back. We have to follow that up with rook e1, or else the knight would just move. And then, yeah, we just weren't fully appreciating that we are actually losing the e4 pawn in a lot of cases. And actually, yeah, that flashed another quick tactic, bishop e3, and then they lose the bishop. So also something I skimmed over in my quicker analysis, but let's assume rook fe8, and then we're going to have to give up this pawn. Okay, so we did overlook that particular move order, which is not that big a surprise. There were a lot to keep track of. But this version wasn't so bad. Same principles, we're going after this knight. We did end up losing it. Computer's giving bishop g6 even, being so patient. That would be very impressive if anyone played bishop g6. Because sure, let's say bishop e3, pawn moves. I'll just pick the light square. I guess, yeah, like, it's always going to be that black should win the e4 pawn because I messed up on whatever it was. Move 8. Move 8 or move 9. And they just didn't find one of the good ways to do it. Okay. Yeah, this rook made no sense to me. What about the other rook? Bishop g5. Oh, I guess that's true. I could play bishop takes f6, couldn't I? I guess that's fair. Maybe that's what they were thinking of, so that I can grab my pawn back, Desperado style. I guess that's fair. Yeah, there's not really any other way around that. Okay, I mean, it's very counterintuitive then, but yeah, okay, if that's a concrete justification, then fine. Which just goes back to showing that they did not pick their best way to capture this pawn. So if they had played rook takes, bishop takes, doubled, something like this, I mean, I guess king f2 looks like a bad choice because of rook c4, and I wonder if, yeah, they just come up to c5 eventually. And then we might even lose both of these pawns, because I would not have played it carefully if we got to this exact point. So they can take a move to save their kingside, and then I can't stop c5 and losing c3. So technically, yeah, king f2 here would be inaccurate, but it's a long ways from being a forced move. But bishop takes, that's even a slightly easier version, and then they are technically up a pawn, so computer is going to recognize that, but it's very unlikely to come up with an actual path that makes progress. Like, you can try to follow along however far it'll take you, see how long this point 2 or point 3 will last, but it definitely should tend towards 0 eventually. I guess, yeah, I sort of skimmed over here. If they don't stop me with their king, I don't really know what a random move even is for black here, but let's say something like this. We want to trade this and then keep this pawn moving. King b7 at this point doesn't even really help because a6, and I mean, if this pawn gets to a7, that's a serious anchor on them that they always have to keep watch of that, and they can't actually push an extra pawn in any way. So they did stop that with their king b7, and then, yeah, we're pretty firmly into zeros, I think. I don't know if there's all that much else for me to look at. I think we covered our important points already. I guess one quick check on king f4, but yeah, it should never be going anywhere because they keep gaining some time on my bishop as their king comes all the way across, and then whatever they want to do, they can hold this comfortably. Okay, so we'll push forward a few more moves, and then check around here. If we, let's say, take here. Yeah, I mean, one way or another, things just liquidate, so I don't think there's a lot to look at there. And then maybe our last question here, is there any real difference with bishop takes c7? No, doesn't seem like it at all. If we go takes and takes, then probably just, well, I guess king takes actually. Yeah, that is fine. And then if I have to, then I can just sacrifice bishop for pawn, and then obviously it's a draw as well. Black has no pawns left, and white can sack their own bishop when they have to. So just lock down 0-0 the whole way, and yeah, okay, it's a draw. So lessons for today, well, I hope you learned something about opposite bishop endgames, how to not make a fool of yourself when you are playing even down a pawn. As far as the opening, yeah, it's Scotch Four Knights, and then just remember to take on d5. It's partly because when I play this as black, I have some history with not taking back immediately, although I think my line would be I would castle first. And then here, you don't have to take this pawn. You do have another option you can consider. But anyways, gave up a pawn, shouldn't have, and then my opponent did not fully take advantage, so we held on in a fairly basic endgame, the way it shook out. So thank you for watching our video today. I can't promise when I will be back next, but hopefully in less than a month this time. We'll see. But see you next time.